Good day, my dear students. Today we are going to discuss, or in this video, we are going to discuss all about conscience. Now, this is a part of our discussion in ethics wherein it can be considered to be the root of all actions. When we speak about root, dito mismo sumisibol yung mga actions natin more than our intellect, more than our free will, more than our freedom to act, which is the human acts. Conscience is the one we would find out whether it would be the one who dictates us or the one that would guide us. Okay? So, let's have the danger first on the discussion on conscience. Don't confuse the term conscience with that of the term consciousness, because the term consciousness means it is being aware and able to understand what is happening around you. A person's mind and thoughts, knowledge that is shared by a group of people. Okay? Ito yung pag sinasabing conscious. Ito yung pagiging aware, pagiging sensical mo, conscious ka. Meaning, even the slightest of senses, meron ka. Okay? Kaya nga you are conscious on the things that you are doing, na ginagawa mo. Halimbawa na lang ng consciousness ay kapag, halimbawa sa pagkain na lamang, kapag tinatawag kang health conscious, hindi ba dapat ang kinakain mo ay balanced diet? May gulay at mayroong karne, mayroong protina, di ba? So, yan ang sinasabing conscious ka dahil alam mo yung gagawin mo. But later on the last part of this discussion, makikita natin what is the real connection of conscience and consciousness, no? Bakit ko kailangan sabihin ang consciousness? Because you may often confuse yourself with the term conscious sa conscience. But really, meron silang connection. Yun nga lang, ang focus ng discussion natin is all about conscience. No. Conscience is somehow the same as loob or nakim. It comprises the whole of the person, utang na loob, bukal sa kalooban, sakit tinakim. No? Una, conscience is the same as loob or nakim. Yung kalooban mo. How is it formed? Yung kalooban mo. Kasi, ang sinasabi natin dito, yung konsensya, di ba minsan pag nagkakaproblema, ang sinasabi, ano bang konsensya ang meron ka? Meaning to say, ano ba yung kalooban na meron ka? Pero kapag sinabi kasi nating loob, it could be something like utang na loob, no? Pag sinabing utang na loob, that dapat magpasalamat ka, humingi ka ng pasalamat dahil yun yung dikta ng konsensya mo. Bukal sa kalooban dahil tumulong ka na bukal na hindi ka pinipilit, kundi ikaw ang nagkusa. Dahil yun yung konsensya mo. That's how your conscience was formed. And even in Ilocano, we have sakit tinakim. Yung nakim, yung loob, when we felt being hurt, no, yung pag nasaktan tayo, yan yun. How do we react on it? Again, it is our totality as a person. It comprises the whole of the person. So, what could be the possible sources of conscience? I will not elaborate, but here it is enumerated. We have parents, we have church, we have community, we have school, we have religious education, and of course, we have God. Okay? So, pag sinabing sources of conscience, yung pinagmulan ng ating konsensya. Now, going back, sources of conscience, again, it is all about yung pinagmulan. How is our conscience being formed? Okay? So, ito yung mga enumerated na kung saan kinukuha natin. Okay? Now, ano naman ang sinasabing misconceptions of conscience? What could possibly go wrong? Okay? Sa Tagalog ay, saan kaya nagkakamali minsan ng konsensya, yung pagkakaintindi natin? Ito yung sinasabi na makonsensya ka naman. Kasi, when we speak about makonsensya ka naman, sinasabi na, like, parang wala kang puso doon sa ginawa mo. No? Like, ang taas-taas ng pride mo. Di ba? Next, sundin mo ang konsensya mo. Kapag sinabi mong sundin, bakit? Ito ba yung nagdidikta sa'yo ng gagawin mo? What if I followed my conscience but it is a bad conscience? Di ba? Sundin mo ang konsensya mo means gawin mo kung ano yung tama, gawin mo yung nararapat. Next is, wala kang konsensya. This is this is a misconception. Bakit naging misconception ang wala kang konsensya? Dahil every person who is aware of their surroundings has a conscience. And maging tayong mga tao, we have the senses, this little sense that we have could be our conscience. Kasi may utak ang tao because this is from our rationality and it is formed, di ba? Dinedevelop, no? So, the last one is voice of God. When you speak about voice of God na, ano ba ang sinabi sa'yo ng Diyos? Parang ganun, yun ang magiging konsensya mo. No, hindi natin pwedeng i-equate yun because our conscience is deeply rooted for us human beings, no, sa ating mga tao. But the greater reality is this. The greater reality is God, when we speak about how the church teaches us, no, it is not really the voice, but God continues to guide us and to form us as persons. Pero hindi ang boses ng Diyos yung konsensya natin. Okay? It is what we call as a misconception dahil yun ang pagkakaintindi natin ng konsensya, itong apat na ito. So, how are we going to resolve this one? Una, makonsensya ka naman, meaning that dictates of other people, no? The external sense, the external factors would not dictate you as a person because you are conscience is internal, not external. Take note of that. Sundin mo ang konsensya mo. Okay? As conscience is internal, no? But not all conscience are good, not all conscience are bad. So you have to weigh things down and you have to form it, 'di ba? Next, wala kang konsensya. Sabi ko na kanina, hindi pwede na walang konsensya ang isang tao dahil siya ay nag-iisip, meron siyang rationality, and then the last one as the voice of God, okay? That we are being guided by the church or whatever religion that we believe to, but it is not technically the voice of God, but God only guides us to what is right, to what is just. And He helps us, no, in forming our conscience. Okay? So, that's the misconceptions and how are we going to resolve it? And according to CCC, no, a well-formed conscience is upright and truthful. It formulates its judgments according to reason, in conformity with the true good, willed by the wisdom of the Creator. Everyone must avail himself of the means to form his conscience. Ayan o. Everyone must avail himself of the means to form his conscience. Kaya nga meron tayo kanina yung sources of conscience. Yun yung mga means paano tayo lalago sa ating konsensya. How are we going to form our conscience, no? Not just conscience but a good conscience, yung mabuting konsensya. Okay? So, let's go now to the technical definitions of conscience, okay? A personal sense of moral content of one's own conduct, intention, or character with regard to a feeling of obligation to do right or be good. Wherein a philosophical viewpoint, it is innate, intuitive, faculty determining the perception of right and wrong is called intuitionism. Wherein in psychology, the learned responses to particular social stimuli. Because according to psychologist Sigmund Freud, we have the so-called superego, which is our conscience, wherein it states that the human person has moral values through parental approval or punishment, which should be internalized set of prohibition, condemnations, and inhibitions. Okay, let's go to it one by one. A personal sense of moral content of one's own conduct, yung pagkilos natin. Intention, bakit mo ginawa yung kilos na yon? Or character, ano ba ikaw bilang tao at ginawa mo yung kilos na iyon? With regard to a feeling of obligation to do right or be good. Okay? Minsan kasi, sabi nga natin, ang tao ay normal lang na magkamali ang isang tao, pero pag patuloy na nagkakamali ang isang tao, ay hindi na tama iyon. Di ba? That's why, dapat our conscience is focused to do what is good. It dictates us to what is good. That is why we form our conscience to be good. Okay? In a philosophical viewpoint, it is innate. Yan yung sinasabi ko kanina sa misconception. Hindi siya pwedeng external. It must be always internal. Because ito yung perception natin kung ano yung tama at mali. Simpleng example lang naman. Alam mo na mali yung mangopya sa exam, pero bakit mo ginagawa? Diba? That's the simplest explanation or the simplest example that I could give. Learned responses to particular social stimuli. Ito yung upbringing sa atin, no? Na in one family, tama yung action na ginagawa mo, but in one family, mali yung action na ginagawa mo. Because culture, traditions, customs, and all of those gives a factor to that person sa upbringing niya bilang tao. Okay? Next. The part of the mind that makes you aware of your actions as being either morally right or morally wrong. A feeling that something you have done is morally wrong. And the function of the senses is consciousness of the moral goodness or blameworthiness of one's own conduct, intentions, and character together with the feeling of obligation to do right or be good. Ito ning paulit-ulit lang to kanina. Okay. The part of the mind that makes you aware of your actions as being either morally right or morally wrong. No? Ito yung hindi siya parang sense of guilt. Nagigilt ka dahil alam mong mali yung ginawa mo, pero naiinis ka dapat ginawa mo na lang yung tama. Di ba? Yun yung sinasabi dito that parang pakiramdam mo may mali kang ginawa kahit tama naman. Di ba? Parang mali bang tumulong sa kapwa? Mali bang gumawa ng tama? Parang ganun yung tanong dito eh. Mali bang gumawa ng tama? Pero kung titignan talaga natin, if you are going to dig deeper, no? Bakit may sense of guilt sa ating mga sarili? And remember that sense of guilt is being that innate um, character of conscience, no? Na bakit ko ginawa yung may pagsisisi? Bakit ko ginawa yung isang action na yun? Bakit ko ginawa ito? Okay? So that is conscience. Now, we have this question. Can we consider the act as good if it follows erroneous conscience? This is the question posed by St. Thomas of Aquinas. Okay. Erroneous conscience. Ito yung sinasabi natin na can we consider the act as good if it follows erroneous conscience? Na sinasabi natin na may tama ba sa gitna ng mga mali na dikta ng konsensya? Okay? Kasi kapag sinasabi nating erroneous conscience, okay, ito yung to err is human. Nagkakamali talaga tayo bilang tao. Dahil nga, baka naman hindi pa natin totally formed. Kaya nga it is developing, it is growing. No? Pero, meron ba talagang tama doon kahit tayo ay nagkakamali? Okay? Let's see. So, conscience, it is not equivalent to psychological and moral belief. Again, ito yung isa sa mahalaga nyo na ba't maintindihan. Hindi siya katumbas ng psychological at moral belief. Ano ang sinasabi ko dito? Ang sinasabi dito, hindi niya kapantay yung sa character, yung attitude ng isang tao. Okay? Kundi, ito yung may sariling mundo si konsensya at maging sa moral belief na dahil ito yung sinabi, ito yung gagawin. No? But rather, ito yung sinabi, alamin mo kung bakit niya sinabi yun. No, alamin mo. So ano bang sinasabi ng erroneous conscience? Conscience that fails to recognize the true moral laws which it is naturally predisposed to witness within our heart. Okay? Medyo iba yung ano na to, di ba? Okay. So when we speak about the erroneous conscience, it is that the conscience that fails to recognize the true moral laws. When we speak about the true moral laws, ito yung simple lang. Ano ba yung dapat? Ano ba yung tama? Ano ba yung mabuti kong gagawin? And that is because it is naturally predisposed to witness within our hearts. Okay? So, in forming that conscience na hindi erroneous, it must be always what is good, what is just, and what is right. Okay? Now, let's have these three concerns of conscience. Number one is conscience as pluralistic. Okay? It can be compared to an empty box that can be filled by any moral content. Okay. Palagay natin ang isang karton, no? Isang karton na walang laman. Pero kapag nilagyan mo ito ng kung isang samut-sari, nagkakaroon siya ng laman, di ba? Pero bibigyan ko kayo ng halimbawa. Kapag ikaw ay pumupunta ng grocery, no? Hindi ba't ang pagpapackage, ang paglalagay ng mga binili mo, nakahiwalay ang sabon, nakahiwalay ang delata, nakahiwalay yung mga pagkain doon sa mga panlinis, 'di ba? Nakahiwalay yan. Bakit anong silbi nun? Bakit nila ginagawa? Simple lang. Dahil iniiwasan, no, na makontaminate yung ibang mga pagkain. Okay? Yung ibang mga bagay. Ganun din dito, ganun lang din kasimple ito. Okay? Ang tao, palagay natin na hindi niya pa alam yung mga bagay-bagay. Pero kapag tinuruan mo yan ng kalokohan, technically, magiging loko-loko yan. Pero kung tinuruan mo yan ng kabutihan, sigurado, gagawa ng kabutihan yan. Kaya tinatawag siyang pluralistic dahil hindi lang naman iisa yung pwedeng moral content na mailagay doon, kundi marami, kundi samut-sari yung mga pwede makuha ng isang tao. Pero ang mahalaga dito, no, dapat yung nilalagay natin doon sa karton na yon ay yung tama, ano yung dapat, ano yung just, yun. Okay? So, conscience as pluralist. Conscience as morally neutral. When we speak about morally neutral, it is appealing to conscience that does not, usually add anything to the moral justification of any particular conduct or principle. Your conscience will not justify the act. Okay. When we speak about conscience will not justify the act, okay? Ito yung sinasabi natin na hindi porket ginawa mo yung bagay na yon ay yun yung sasabihin mo, yun po kasi yung naging dikta ng konsensya ko. Hindi pe pwedeng ganun yon. Bakit? Dahil po, no, yung moral justification, no, kapag sasabihin mo na, ito po kasi naging dikta, ganito po kasi ako bilang tao, ay hindi yan tatanggapin. Bakit? The act dominates more than your conscience. Meaning to say, unless it is proven, no, na tama ka, na hindi ka mali sa ginawa mong action, no, yun yung magiging judgment. So, titignan natin ngayon that conscience is neutral because it is not equivalent to the act. Okay? And the last and the concern of morally neutral is this relativistic concern. Okay? When we speak about this relativistic concern, there is this environment of the person which make it the context. Yung mga biases kasi, no, doon sa environment na pinanggalingan niya. It might be this one, the context, it might be the background, the character, personality, biases, culture, customs, traditions. Maaring dito kasi nanggagaling yung konsensya niya. Kaya nga remember kanina, sources of conscience, eto na yun, dito na pumapasok. Dahil ang isang action ay pwedeng tama o pwedeng mali nang nakadepende sa konteksto. Halimbawa na lang, no? Meron tayong mga kultura dito sa Isabela na mali sa Manila. Merong kultura sa Manila na tama na nagiging mali sa atin, di ba? So we have to balance it out. Kailangan natin balansehin we have to balance the scale between the action and between the background. Kaya nga hindi natin pwede agad ma-judge na masama isang taong yun if the culture, no? Yes, the act is bad. Pero what if that is true to them? What if that is right to them? Okay? So, that is the relativistic concern. The environment, the biases is relative to the act, to the judgment of the act. Okay? And the last one here is this conscience as subjective. It is because when we speak about objective, first things first, ethical values are objective, and conscience, it is subjective. Okay? Again, ethical values are objective because it is written, because it is It is written on paper. Yan ang sinasabi nating objective. But when we speak about conscience as subjective, because again, it is innate. Okay? It is a sense of of sense of duty motivates to act according to moral principles or beliefs you already possess. Ito na yung formation of conscience na naman. General sense of moral obligations in the individual's consciousness. When we speak about consciousness, ito na naman, ano ba yung connection ng conscience and consciousness na sinasabi natin kanina? Our consciousness makes us aware of what is happening around us. If we are aware of these actions, makes us if of these actions makes us aware of our actions. Okay? The more we are aware of our surroundings, we must be more aware of our actions or thus face with consequences. Sorry. Dito sa umpisa, if we are aware of these actions, yun lang. Okay? Because, no, yung consciousness, kapag sabi nga natin, it's a sense of being aware. If you are aware with that of your surroundings, then alam mo yung gagawin mo. Alam mo na nga madumi ang bahay, hindi ka pa maglilinis. Alam mo na nga na sabihin natin makalat ang bakuran, hindi mo pa winawalis yung kalat na yon. So, alam mo dapat yung gagawin mo, pero hindi mo ginagawa. So, ano yung possible consequence? Baka pagalitan ka, baka masermonan ka, di ba? So, that is the connection of conscience and that of consciousness. And the last one is, conscience is internal. When we speak about internal, because it molds us of who we are and how we act. The judgment of conscience is based on our actions, which is the good actions. To fully form conscience, we must primarily have the consciousness to form ourselves in view of the good. Thus, conscience is formed based on our consciousness of living a good and moral life. If you are aware of what is good, what is right, what is just, then therefore, you can form your conscience just like that consciousness. If you are aware, the more aware that you are, the more responsible you will be. Okay? So, there ends the discussion. I hope you have learned something. I hope you have understood the discussion on conscience. Bakit kailangan to sa ethics? Because ito yung nagdidictate sa atin whether our actions be it good or bad, or how do we form our conscience in being it good, just, and what is right. Okay, so there ends our discussion. I hope you have learned something. Thank you. Keep safe and God bless everyone.